I was born 17 years ago. For the past 6 months, I've been in my basement playing Skyrim. But for all those hours, I've never understood what the hell has been going on. I scoured the internet, searching for wikis, to find even the most obscure events in the Elder Scrolls. Behold, sunlight now enters my room. These are the early hours of the morning, and my few moments of free time. Fueled by obscene amounts of caffeine, I search for the events of the Elder Scrolls lore.
In this episode, we'll be getting into the actual history. So, the earliest date we have from the Dark Brotherhood is 2nd Era 358, where a note addressed to Brother is found beneath the floorboards of an abandoned house in the Nordic village of Jallenheim. Again, I don't really know if I'm pronouncing that correctly or not. Now, this note depicted a war going on between the Dark Brotherhood and the Morag-Ton. The second note we have about the Dark Brotherhood, chronological-wise, is about 50 years later in 2nd Era 412. The Blood Queen, Almahera of Hagaeth, wrote a short piece in her journal mentioning that her family had enlisted the Dark Brotherhood's services since her grandfather's time. So, together with the note found in Jallenheim, this puts the formation of the Dark Brotherhood as an actual guild around 2nd Era 358 or 360 at the least. So this is really early and really obscure stuff. So now we're going to get into sort of the more well-known things. In the centuries after the fall of the Second Empire, the Dark Brotherhood is really beginning to show just how powerful it's began to become. In the activities during the Interregnum, which by the way is the period in between the Riemann dynasty and Talos's or Tyroseptim's establishment of the Septim dynasty, we don't really know anything of their activities, but we're assuming that they prospered because by the time of the Third Era, they're present throughout all, well, most at least, of Tamriel. Pelagius I, Tyroseptim's heir, was murdered by the Dark Brotherhood while praying in the Temple of the One. Shortly after, the Dark Brotherhood developed a strong presence in the Iliac Bay region, having a guild hall in almost every town and city by the time of the Warp of the West in 3rd Era 417. In 3rd Era 421, a Dark Brotherhood member named Graywin Belweath began his own crusade against the Dark Brotherhood. He believed that Sithis had ordered him to remove all non-vampires from the Dark Brotherhood. Graywin founded an organization known as the Crimson Scars. Now, this blew up in his face pretty quickly. Not only is he spitting in the face of the Dark Brotherhood, which at this point is very powerful, he was actually betrayed by a fellow member of the Crimson Scars. So, the Dark Brotherhood swiftly had them all murdered, but the final fate of Graywin and his sanctuary is still unknown. Since the Morag-Ton is extremely powerful in Morrowind, particularly Vanderfall. The Dark Brotherhood tried to get into Morrowind, but was almost driven out entirely. In Third Era, 427, the Brotherhood again attempted to gain a foothold on the island, but was repelled ferociously by the local Night Mother, Severa Magia. And by the way, that's just a rank in the Morag-Ton. However, she was assassinated, and many other leaders of the island were as well. Later that year, King Halu Helseths, and again, pronunciation, I don't have any idea, complain all you want in the comments, hired the Brotherhood to assassinate the Nerevarine, the hero you play as in Morrowind, because he feared he would challenge his rule. In response, the Nerevarine ended up tracking down the assassins to their sanctuary in the Manor District of Old Mournhold and killed their leader. Whoops. By the way, their leader was Dandrus Fuels. Helseth, that's a bit of a tongue twister, later explained himself to the Nerevarine. The Dark Brotherhood also made an attempt on Baron Zea's life, who was a queen on the Morrowind mainland, but the assassins were intercepted by the Nerevarine as well. The next most notable event in the history of the Dark Brotherhood is known as the Purification, and this happened in Third Era 433. The Dark Brotherhood in Cyrodiil was betrayed within by Matthew Bellamont, a trusted speaker, who was secretly attempting to wipe out the Dark Brotherhood in Cyrodiil at least, as an act of revenge for the assassination of his mother. Fortunately for the Dark Brotherhood, one of their new members quickly rose in the ranks and actually became a silencer of the Black Hand and purified the Chetanel Sanctuary, despite being deceived by the traitor into assassinating most fellow members of the Black Hand. The remaining speakers, including Belmont, the newcomer, went to the Night Mother's crypt beneath the Lucky Old Lady statue in Brayville to seek her guidance. It was there where Belmont revealed himself, and he killed 2 of the other 4 speakers, but the newcomer ended up slaying him. The Night Mother then made the newcomer her listener, and the Dark Brotherhood started to recover. However, the damage was still pretty bad, since the loss of half the Black Hand and the purification of the I cannot talk today. Chetanel Sanctuary left the Cyrodiil branch of the Dark Brotherhood crippled at the end of the Third Era. So, at this point, the Dark Brotherhood really starts to go downhill. A combination of internal fractures and external pressures prevented the Dark Brotherhood from truly recovering. The Great War strained the organization, along with most of Tamriel, and riots in Brayville, Bruma, and Chetanel became huge problems. Several sanctuaries and bases of the Brotherhood across Tamriel were destroyed or either had to be abandoned during this time. Also, the Great War proved to be particularly bad because the organization became a secondary target for both the Empire and the Aldmeri Dominion. In certain provinces like Hammerfell, they were completely eliminated. Now, since the Dark Brotherhood, that had previously been this sort of huge entity across all of Tamriel, sort of lost their ability to communicate with one another, they weren't really able to organize contracts in certain regions, and this really weakened their reputation and their power. Also, the Shadow Scale, the sort of special Argonian Corps that was trained from birth, their facility in Archon in Blackmarsh had to be completely abandoned. And with no recruits, the Shadow Scales began to die off. Also, the Black Hand itself became divided on the direction of the Brotherhood. Some were pushing for more expansion, while others wanted to consolidate the power they still had. In 4th Era, 186, the Bruma Sanctuary in Cyrodiil was lost with almost no survivors. And this only served to throw the Brotherhood into even more chaos and demoralize it further. One by one, the sanctuaries in the other provinces continued to fall as well. By the end of 4th Era 187, only 4 known sanctuaries were still active in all of Tamriel. The Brotherhood's headquarters in Citadel, the Wayrest Sanctuary in High Rock, the Corinth Sanctuary in Elsewhere, and the Falkreath Sanctuary in Skyrim. However, things were about to get even worse. In 4th Era 188, Wayrest was attacked by Corsairs, and the sanctuary located there was raided and destroyed. The surviving Black Hand leadership there shut down the sanctuary and moved its members to reinforce the crucial Cyrodiil faction. The political and social chaos that was beginning to envelop the Empire allowed a massive gang war in Bravil to rage unhindered. And this led to the death of a few more Brotherhood members, including the Listener. And this also destroyed the Night Mother's crypt. One sole survivor managed to escape Citadel with the Night Mother's stone coffin. So now that the last known Listener was dead, and no new Listener being chosen by the Night Mother, the Dark Brotherhood was forced to rely on word of mouth to gather new contracts. In order to preserve the Night Mother's quickly deteriorating corpse, the surviving Black Hand reinstituted the ancient position of Keeper, who is charged with keeping the Night Mother's corpse intact, so her spirit can remain in Tamriel and speak to the Listener. But the Night Mother still did not speak, and this made a demoralized group even more depressed. So, with even more Black Sacraments now being unheard, they began to get desperate. Eventually, Rashaw, the leader of the Citadel Sanctuary and the only remaining member of the Black Hand, proclaimed that he was the Listener. However, when he failed to confirm the words that the Night Mother taught to all the Listeners, and confirmed by all Keepers, he was killed. Soon, the only known remaining member in Cyrodiil was one assassin known as Cicero, the Keeper. Though he was reported to be a great assassin, he eventually went mad from a combination of isolation, demoralization, and desperation. By 4th Era 200, only the Falkreath Sanctuary in Skyrim remained active, so Cicero took the Night Mother there. The Falkreath Sanctuary was destroyed shortly after this, with most, if not all, of its members being killed. It's unknown whether Cicero reached the sanctuary before its destruction. So this is where reports start to get not very clear. Some say the Dark Brotherhood has been wiped out for good, but other reports have that parts of the Dark Brotherhood not only survived, but succeeded in assassinating the reigning Emperor Titus Mede II while he was in Skyrim. Only time will tell which one of these reports ends up being true. So, this concludes the long saga of the Dark Brotherhood, at least for now. Again, with all the information in this, chances are I might not have been able to fit everything in, and heaven forbid, maybe even have gotten a few things mixed up. So if you have something else, really any more information, or if you have a request for me to do, please do not hesitate to post it in the comments. Well, I'm TheLoopyAlchemist, and thank you so much for watching.